The town of Dust Rock had never been kind to anyone too soft. The streets were lined with the broken hopes of wanderers who'd come chasing fortune, only to find dust, whiskey, and the kind of law that carried a badge but no soul. The saloon was the heart of it all, where deals were made, lives were lost, and pasts were forgotten with every clink of a glass. It was a place where men wagered money, cattle, and sometimes, if they were drunk enough and cruel enough, people. On one unusually hot evening in late August, the whiskey poured heavier than usual. And the bets? They got crueler. Caleb Maddox, a former cavalry captain with more scars than friends, sat at the edge of the poker table. He was a shadow of a man he'd once been, the war having taken not just his men, but his reason to believe in good. Since then, he drifted from town to town, drinking, gambling, and avoiding any connection that might resemble healing. That night, he sat with the worst kind of company: ranchers who had too much money and no conscience, outlaws who grinned like devils, and one man who wore a sheriff's star but acted like a snake. One more round, slurred Boone Calhoun, the loudest and richest among them. His face was flushed, and his words were barely stitched together. "Let's make this interesting." He pointed to a girl across the room, Etta, the saloon girl, the one with fire in her hair and sadness in her smile. She'd been dancing earlier, though her feet had clearly hurt. Now she sat in the corner, holding a cracked glass and her silence. "I got a deed to 200 acres. And her," Boone said, laughing. The table went quiet. Even the piano stopped. "You can't bet a person," Caleb muttered. Boone shrugged. "She's mine, owes me. That makes her mine to wager." No one challenged it. Not the lawman, not the bartender, not even Etta, who looked down like her soul had already left the room. Caleb looked at her, then back at Boone, and felt something twist inside him. He didn't know if it was pity, anger, or a memory from long ago when his sister had nearly been taken by a soldier, drunk on his own power. So he played. Cards hit the table. Eyes watched. Boone grinned with too many teeth. Caleb said nothing. When the final card turned, Boone slammed his fist. Caleb had won. "She ain't yours no more," Caleb said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the smoke. Boone stood, reaching for the revolver on his belt. But the sound of Caleb cocking his own gun stopped him. "Don't make me finish what someone else started," Caleb warned. Boone spat, cursed, and stormed out. Etta didn't move. Caleb walked over and offered his hand. "You don't have to come with me," he said. "But you don't have to stay here either." She looked at his hand, then his face. A long moment passed. Then she stood and walked with him out into the night. They didn't talk much on the ride to the old cabin outside town. It wasn't much. A crumbling place that once belonged to his commanding officer, now dead. Caleb had been fixing it slowly, though he never knew why. Until now. Etta took the chair by the fire. She didn't ask questions, and he didn't offer stories. But he cooked, she ate. And in the silence between bites, something shifted. It went on like that for days. He worked the land, she cleaned what little there was. She sang to herself when she thought he wasn't listening, and he started sleeping without nightmares. One day he asked, "Why didn't you run?" She looked at him for a long time. "Because I didn't know if I'd be running from something worse." He nodded, he understood. Then came the day Boone returned. Not alone, with men and guns. They surrounded the cabin, demanded Etta be returned. Caleb stood on the porch, shotgun in hand. "She ain't yours," he called out. Boone laughed. "And you think you can stand against us alone?" Etta stepped beside Caleb. Her voice was calm but fierce. "He's not alone." The standoff didn't last long. Caleb knew how to shoot, and the men Boone brought were drunk and dumb. In minutes the dust cleared, and only Boone remained, bleeding from his pride. Caleb let him crawl away. That night, Etta sat beside him by the fire. "Why did you really play that hand?" He looked into the flames. "Because I couldn't watch another soul get caged." She touched his hand. "You didn't just save me," she whispered. "You saved yourself." He didn't answer. He just held her hand tighter. And for the first time in years, he felt something like peace. The weeks after Boone's defeat brought a strange quiet to Dust Rock. Word spread that Caleb Maddox had taken up with the Saloon girl, but none dared challenge it, not after what happened on that hill. And while whispers still chased them, the cabin on the edge of the mesa became something else entirely, a place where two broken souls were learning how to live whole again. Etta began planting flowers outside the porch. Caleb built a proper fence. They still spoke little, but every glance said more than words could carry. At night they'd sit by the fire, sometimes in silence, sometimes telling stories from lives they'd both tried to forget. Etta spoke of her mother's lullabies, and Caleb finally confessed the horrors he'd seen in the war, and slowly something soft took root. One morning Etta found an old harmonica in the drawer. She laughed, a real laugh, and Caleb just smiled as she tried to play it. The sound was awful, but it was beautiful. They went to town together after a while. The first time the silence was loud, people staring, whispering. But Etta kept her head high and Caleb never left her side. When the general store clerk refused to serve her, Caleb spoke with his fists. After that, the town got quieter. Back home, Etta started writing in a small notebook. Poems mostly, things she couldn't say aloud. One day she handed it to Caleb without a word. He read every line, and then he wrote something back. It said, "You don't belong to the past. You belong to now," she cried. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Then came the letter, a real one, from the government, offering Caleb a medal for his service in the war. He laughed bitterly and tossed it in the fire. "You should take it," Etta said. "I didn't do anything worth remembering," he replied. She stepped close. "You saved a life. You saved mine." He didn't argue. A week later he rode to the ceremony. She went with him. When they called his name, he stood tall. Etta squeezed his hand. He received the medal and said nothing to the crowd. But as they rode back home, he smiled for the first time in a long, long time. That night he asked her, "If you could go anywhere, where would it be?" She answered without hesitation, "Right here, with you." The next spring they built a new cabin, bigger, stronger, a place for music, for poetry, for healing. People started visiting, children laughed in the garden, and the ghosts grew quieter. One evening, Caleb stood outside watching the sunset. Etta joined him. "Do you think we were meant to meet?" she asked. He looked at her. "I think we were meant to save each other." They kissed under the orange sky, and in that moment the past finally let go. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment for Caleb and Etta. Let us know if you believe in second chances, in love that heals, in quiet heroes. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that dig deep, stir the soul, and remind us what it means to truly live. Because somewhere out there, someone needs a story like this. And maybe that someone is you.